So passive design, it's a way to really work with your local climate to maintain a comfortable temperature in your home. So you're not adding a substantial amount of heating or cooling, and you're not relying on an active mechanical system.
Mm.
Instead, that activity transfers over to whoever's living in the home. Instead of an active mechanical system, you're relying on an active homeowner to manage the systems and loads properly. And that's what I call a responsible homeowner.
Hi, this is Jack Baldwin with Raynard Architectural Designs. You're listening to the By Design podcast, where we talk about architecture, design, and inspired living. Today, I'm excited because I've got my very good friend, Farah, joining us today. Farah, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Jack. How are you?
I'm great. We're both having a day off of work on a beautiful Monday in October. So I'm glad I got you today while you're relaxing.
Yep. Now we can get our creative juices flowing with an awesome topic today.
Yeah. So Farah and I spoke, what was that, in September? Was it September already?
Yeah, it's been a month at least.
I know, but it feels like so much longer for some reason. I think September was just jam-packed. So for people who might not have met you, just tell us a little bit about yourself, Farah. What do you do? You're up in New Jersey area, right?
Yes, I live in Jersey, but I'm a New Yorker, born and raised. I'm an architect in New York City government, so bringing forth some government experience along with residential and commercial projects, and I really work through the lens of green building standards and compliance review. So sustainability is truly a passion of mine, one that I'm hoping to get everyone listening to really join in on.
Yeah, and that's part of why we connected. I found you on Twitter, and your handle stood out to me. It says Renewable Farah, and so your branding and everything that you put out on your personal brand is very much about sustainability. So when we had you on our podcast last month, we talked a lot about your role in local government and how you're helping people think about sustainability and green building. Do you have some certifications? Are you certified? What are those?
Yep, so I'm primarily certified in LEED, building design and construction, but then I also work with and I'm versed in other green building certification programs that compete with LEED and primarily work with local energy code.
We have clients who talk to us a lot about sustainability, and we have clients who ask us a lot of questions about how can they get the most out of their home, how can they come up with a concept that would be a net zero, or not just saving costs, but also be a construction project that would result in a home that's going to last for a long time, that's not going to end up costing them more than it to maintain than it does. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Actually, I've got one of our projects that was designed by James Knight, our lead designer here at Raynard Architectural Designs. So I'm pretty excited about this because you're going to talk to me about this project in particular and how somebody could get the most, what kind of solutions could they put into this home to get the most energy efficient solutions out of it as possible. So one of the things that before we even start showing you the renderings I have for our conversation is passive design. What is passive design? What does that mean when you hear that term?
So before we dive right in, I just want to preface this with saying that I really hope that whoever's listening can take this conversation and sort of start to think like an architect. So I think today we just wanted to focus on passive design because it's a way for you to start thinking more sustainably about your project from the onset. So passive design, it's a way to really work with your local climate to maintain a comfortable temperature in your home. So you're not adding a substantial amount of heating or cooling, and you're not relying on an active mechanical system.
Mm.
Instead, that activity transfers over to whoever's living in the home. Instead of an active mechanical system, you're relying on an active homeowner to manage the systems and loads properly. And that's what I call a responsible homeowner.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk through what is passive design more specifically. How can you start thinking through the lens of a passive designer to save energy, to save costs, and have this truly beautiful and durable home?
I love that you said that about thinking like an architect, because one of our mottos at our firm is design with, not design for. So we really want people to have that collaborative mindset.
Mhm.
And it's funny how many clients we talk to that go, I should have been an architect. They go, because I drew
Right.
up these floor plans and I just need somebody who can take it from here and turn it into the home. So I love that we're going to go into this with that type of mindset of how to empower our clients, how to help them think about design and in that kind of a way so that they can partner well with whomever they're working with. When they get to designing their own home, they're thinking like an architect. So with that
Exactly.
said, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and bring up a this project here so we can look at it together. And this one's on our website. It's prominently on our homepage. It's called Holly Creek. And I always get a lot of compliments about this design because James Knight, who I mentioned, came up with this, but I think it's a beautiful home that he came up with. And we always get people telling us that they would love to design a house just like it. So
Mhm.
what we're looking at here is a rendering. This is the rear of the home. What you can see are some big retractable patio doors, a little step down to an outdoor patio, a nice big gradual slope to the rear of the home. At this point, we're south facing. We've got a lot of glass, a lot of windows. But Farah, looking at the rear here of Holly Creek, what are some thoughts you want to get into?
Yeah. So, really what I want to talk about is how passive design can invite nature into the home, and this image is the poster child of that.
Yeah,
And so I really want to talk through some of those exterior elements that you can kick off with to have a passive home. And so one of the first things that comes to mind, and you mentioned that this is a south-facing home, it really is the building orientation.
yeah.
It's before you even start building and drafting anything, you've got to do some site survey and figure out how are you going to orient your home on your site to take advantage of the sun, and any prevailing winds on that site. So you're doing kind of like a microclimate study to
Mm.
understand where the sun moves around, where are you getting a lot of your wind direction coming from, and then taking that and harnessing it. So we know that the sun goes from east to west. And so we can understand that if your building is located on the east-west direction, so that the longest dimension is facing south, as is shown here, then more of your building is going to absorb that solar energy. So if you've got a long axis, a rectangular building facing south, think of the sun starting from the east and going out to west, and how that sun's going to really percolate through your spaces. So when you have a passive solar building, you're thinking of, again, just to sum it up, a rectangular building typically with the long side of your building facing south. That's how you're going to get a lot of your good heating, especially in a climate where it's heating dominated, and you want to basically maximize your solar gain during the winter, and keep your home cool during the summer.
So what if this home had solar panels on it? Where would you would you be thoughtful about where you'd put those solar panels, or does it
Yeah,
matter?
you always want to have your solar panels facing south as much as is possible, and it also plays into the tilt of your panels as well.
Hmm.
You want to have it's typically within 5 to 10 degrees, but always facing true south when possible,
Yeah.
in order to maximize your gain.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of times it's very easy to overlook orientation. When we talk to people, a lot of times we're just thinking about um, how to use the space the best way they can, the land. We design a lot in North Georgia, and North Georgia is known for its mountains. So it's very rare to have a lot that's undeveloped that doesn't have a lot of slopes and rocky terrain, or just it can be challenging. So sometimes it's thinking through the necessity of where you can place the home. But
Yep.
yeah, what you're saying though is orientation is a huge part of just the starting point. When you look at the site location, you've got that survey, and you're looking at the orientation of the home. That's a huge impact on what's going to make this actually taking advantage of how to heat and cool the space. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and actually, while we're on this image, I just noticed that there's an overhang over these southern
Mm.
facing windows, and that's so
Yeah.
important to note. You don't want to overheat your space, and
Hmm.
so your sun is highest in the summer, and so if
Hmm.
you've got an overhang on your southern facing windows and your sun is beaming down from up above, that overhang is actually blocking excessive heat in the summer. But
Yeah.
in the winter, your sun is low, and so you're still getting a lot of solar gain into your home because it's not being blocked, it's at a lower angle. So
Yeah.
it's really able to get into the spaces. So having an overhang like this on your southern orientation is actually super effective.
Yeah.
And something that we're seeing here also, there's a ton of glazing. That whole south side is exposed with these floor to ceiling windows, and that's going to be awesome for solar heat gain during winter. And again, you won't get that overheating because your high summer sun is being blocked by your overhang. So this is actually a really well designed southern facade that we're seeing here.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it is so important to just, that's another big reason why it's so important to think about orientation. And I think
Yep.
sometimes, a lot of times it's just so easy to overlook that. It's so easy to just be like, well, this will work because the contractor told me he has to move less dirt if we build right here.
Yep. Yep.
So
Exactly.
yeah, which
And
is
like,
true.
a lot of times, like, a lot of these cookie cutter homes, you're kind of just following when you start siting a building, you're following how the other homes on the street are oriented without any
Right.
regard to the site design itself. So houses are sited because of, all the homes on that street are facing the road or maybe to maximize views, but that sun movement isn't necessarily looked at. And so that's something you have to start to consider. And I don't know if that's an ordinance that's imposed by the local township that you've got to face a certain direction, but that's something
Yeah.
as a client that you've got to figure out. Can you play around with where you enter your home from and how you orient it on your site?
Yeah. The only thing that sometimes affects orientation is if you're part of a neighborhood that has a building covenant or HOA requirements, where a lot of times those requirements have a lot to do with aesthetics and curb appeal. Because
Mhm.
obviously, if you're building in a neighborhood where homeowners may want to potentially sell their homes one day, the neighborhood is a big factor in marketability of a home. And so sometimes there may be we've run into that where there may be some kind of an ordinance about what the facade looks like.
Mhm.
But you can always work around the facade and the presentation, the curb appeal, so to speak, and still orient your home in a way that will take advantage, like you're saying, of
Mhm.
what's going to maximize heating in the cooler months and cooling in the warmer months.
Yep,
Um,
and I think that if you find yourself restricted to the orientation on a project site, then something that you can be flexible with is how you program your spaces,
yeah,
citing your particular spaces to take advantage of the light. And we'll get more into that as we scroll through, I think here.
yeah.
We'll talk some strategies on how to program your space to take advantage of the sunlight for sure.
Well, before we move on, there's one thing I want to talk about. You mentioned the glazing on the windows, and I'm glad you brought that up because a lot of the times when we talk to homeowners, they almost
Mhm.
everybody I speak with, I want a lot of light. I want as much light as possible coming into my
Yep.
home. I want natural light, or they want that blend of indoor outdoor. They want to be able to very easily get outside and get back inside. Well, that's a fun way to live, and it's the way I want to live. We want to enjoy our outdoor spaces as much as possible. The trade-off is that glass
Mhm.
lets light and heat out and lets light and heat in.
Mhm.
So in the warmer months, heat's always going to go with when it comes to glass. It's going to pass through. And it's going to heat on the warmer side either way. So you're losing heat and you're gaining heat in the times that you don't want. Glass is just it's a problem, as you know.
Yeah, yeah. I think the general rule of thumb is that you want to try and minimize, and it does depend on what climate you are. So a lot of
Mhm.
these design strategies are climate specific, but just as a general rule of thumb, you do want to minimize the windows on your east and west facade to prevent that overheating. And
Right.
again, there's always this balance between daylighting and heat gain and heat loss. So you're always going to try and find some sort of a combination, but you can merge together strategies to find that balance. Low E coatings on windows are a really great way to reflect heat,
Yeah.
and also amping up. And you may not need this, but going from a single pane to a double pane, which is actually just standard now,
Yeah.
versus a triple pane, figuring out if that will help with the insulating heat gain and heat loss as well. And then taking advantage of shading devices as
Yeah.
have been done here for sure.
Yeah, and there's actually quantifiable metrics out there like R factors and different all windows are not created equally, so that's something to think about. Is when we're doing a window and door schedule, you're looking at where you want to place these things. Are you selecting high energy rated windows and doors?
Yeah. And a first step to doing that as a client, if you really want to educate yourself, so your local building energy code is split into climate zones. So first,
Mm,
you want to identify between climate zones 1 through 6, which climate zone is your state located in.
yeah,
Then you can simply go to your local energy code, which should be posted on your local government's website. Look at the table for insulation values for your wall, and look at a table of for fenestration or windows for your solar heat gain coefficients and U factors. And it'll
yeah,
tell you for your climate zone, what are you expecting? And so you can take that baseline value and go to your architect and say, hey, this is what we're required to be doing. Can we go above and beyond this? And does it make sense? So if
absolutely.
you come to your builder, your architect with that baseline knowledge, that goes a long way. They're
Yeah.
gonna know you're paying attention and that you want to do better than the minimum.
And we want that. We actually want our clients to come prepared and educated. That actually helps us do our job really well when we have people who put thought into what they're doing. So yeah, let's go into the next image. This is the front entryway. So from that last image, we saw these big open, this big open doorway leading to the back patio. So it sits kind of in the center, right in the center plumb line of the house. I love this design because this gorgeous little wood patio walkway up here, kind of elevated, and then this little stone courtyard with a reflecting pool. We've got a little place to prepare some drinks or some food, but some couches to sit on. But yeah, big and spacious. You've got the same big
Yeah.
opening right here. What are your thoughts on this image, Farah?
Yeah, so looking at this right now, it's not a very deep footprint, which is great. It doesn't look like it's super deep. So in that case, you can really get a lot of cross ventilation here. So the placement of your windows and your openings really allow for cross draft, so you can cool your home as needed. And so this really allows for passive cooling because again, you can have that cross draft going right through your footprint. And then having this like elongated narrow footprint just allows more of your space to be daylit. And you can see here that there aren't a ton of obstructions in the footprint. You don't have any partitions really blocking out any of that daylight. And you've got those clear story windows that allow the daylight to
Yeah,
penetrate through as well. And just like another general rule of thumb, daylight, it really penetrates. That magic number is between 10 and 15 feet into your space.
yeah,
So keeping that in mind, you don't want to put up a drywall or furniture layout. Like you don't want something obstructing that path of the daylight. So again, this kind of provides that clearance for your room to be well lit without relying on your lighting to be on. And so this
awesome.
effectively.
Yeah, so what you're saying is if you orient right and if you think right about it, you can have this big open space. You can have big windows, big doors, let lots of air in, let lots of light in, and still be energy efficient.
Yeah, and also because the floor area here is more manageable, it's not this isn't um this isn't super huge, so it's because you've got a manageable footprint, you can really take advantage of all those passive elements of the climate in your home.
Mhm.
You can allow for the sun to penetrate through the entire depth, the daylight, and you're creating again a manageable footprint. You don't need to have a ton of space, but there's nothing wrong with wanting a lot of space, but if you can build what you can manage, then you'll find that savings in your utility bills for sure. And you'll
Yeah,
see that a lot of it is more passive and less mechanical because your
yeah.
footprint is compact.
And this, just for orientation's sake, again, from this image where we're standing, this is we're standing in the north facing south, looking through straight through the middle of the home. On one wing to my right here would be one of the bedrooms. On the other wing, you're going to have the kitchen just on the other side of this fireplace, which we'll see in a moment, and then another bedroom. So the sun is coming up on this side, the left. Is that right? Am I orienting right? Or no, the east. So,
Yeah.
so from the right side of the home to the left, kind of that path is going this way.
Mhm.
So let's go inside, Farah,
Okay.
and we are stepping right into the front entryway. This is probably my favorite image of this home.
Beautiful shot.
James did such a good job with this design, and I love the rich colors. I love black with that wood. I think it's really
Mhm.
rich, and I love the stone material here. The first question
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you is about the fireplace. How does this help or hinder? What's the impact it has on energy efficiency?
I mean, I always see the fireplace as just an added supplemental feature that's creating more warmth in the home.
Mhm.
Something that I want to focus a little bit more on here is actually the building material that's surrounding the fireplace,
Sure.
and the wall itself that the fireplace is mounted on.
Yeah.
Something that really comes into play here is thermal mass, and that's actually a huge part of passive savings if you get into it. So thermal mass is essentially something that absorbs heat, and so if you take advantage of thick materials like concrete, brick, etc., and you actually floor your material, your excuse me, you use that material in your flooring as well, then actually you can take some of your low sun in the winter, for example, heat up your floor, and then that floor releases heat.
Hmm.
So in winter, low sun really gets into thermal mass. So if you
Yeah.
focus on, and even in your walls. So here you've got this unobstructed plan that is allowing heat to, and there's no overhang here, I think. But anyway, you get your low winter sun that can percolate into your space, heat up that thick material, and then release it later when you need it at nighttime. That
Hmm.
heat is really trapped in here, and your fireplace is going to be a supplemental source of heat if you need it, but I don't think it will necessarily be needed if you're relying on that thermal mass and using your flooring. And if you think about it, if you've got your sun coming in and heating up your floor and you've got this radiant heat, you want to also think about your furniture layout. So if we're looking at this image here,
Mhm.
let's say there's about let's say there's about 5 to 10 feet from that sofa layout to the exterior opening there. You got that unobstructed space to heat up your floor and then re-release that heat later at night. So you want to think about creating an unobstructed perimeter along your glazing so that heat can be absorbed by the floor. So if we're thinking about it from that lens, we might actually want to move the furniture over so that more of that heat can sink into the floor. But I
Interesting.
mean, this view here shows that you can allow that to happen pretty effectively.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying the actual materials that you build with on the inside of the home, the walls and the flooring, have a really big impact on being able to retain heat.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep, and especially if you do so on your southern face.
yeah, which
So,
is this out this way, out this window here.
got it. Yep. So then this works really well. And if we're thinking about this as a southern space, then something else to really come into play that can come into play here as we're looking at the interior is programming, which we touched on a bit before.
Mhm.
But if you place your active living spaces or working areas on the south side of the building where you might be spending a lot of your time during the day, and you place your less frequently used spaces, let's say your restrooms, any storage or mechanical rooms on your north side, then you're really taking advantage of the sun during the day where most of the occupants are gathering in the building. And so something like this space here that's facing south is just a really great way again to harness the sun and not have to rely on turning on your AC. See something that happens that, and maybe we can scroll over to the next image here, Jack.
Yeah.
Yep. Looking a little bit more at the interior. Something that happens is if you orient your building in the opposite direction, what we were saying, so again, we said that ideally you'd want to have, if it's a rectangular building, you want to have it facing, the long side facing south, the other side facing north.
Mhm.
Um, if you did the inverse, then you might not be getting the energy savings that you want. So you really again have to think about your program and how the spaces are oriented to take advantage of that light.
Yeah.
Um, but think really closely as we look at these interior shots about what spaces are going to go on your north side and what's going to go on your south side. On your north side, you're going to get a lot of bright indirect light, so you're still going to get really well daylit spaces. But again, if you're gathering a lot during the daytime and you want to take advantage of that sun, then think about what spaces are going to be configured on that side of your home.
Yeah. So this is the bedroom on the easternmost wing. So we would step from the main living space into this bedroom.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if,
So yeah, and this is south facing out that window.
okay, oh, this is facing south. Okay, got it.
Mhm.
And generally, we know in the east, on the east side, you'll get a lot of your morning light, and then in the afternoon, you'll get a lot of, on your west facing spaces when you get your afternoon sun. You're thinking again about like a 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. window to take advantage of all of your solar gain. So these are just things to consider when you're figuring out the layout of your space and also the layout of your furniture too. So if you want to avoid a lot of solar glare, you're gonna maybe want to think about your TV or any other equipment being placed in view of the sun on the south
Mhm.
side. Just things to consider.
Yeah, now we're stepping out of that bedroom. We're looking straight into a shared dining room, kitchen. Down that small hallway, if we kept going straight down, we get to the other bedroom on the other wing of the home.
Okay.
And
And
then to
here,
my right, I'm looking outside to the rear.
gotcha. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of landscaping here, and that's actually a pretty good point to touch upon.
Yeah,
When someone comes onto a site, I think the general inclination is to just clear up all the trees and have a bunch of clear land to
right.
plot your house on, but there's so many ways to take advantage of the plantings that we have on site. So you kind of want to, for example, you want to locate your obstructions on the site, like your landscaping or let's say fences or whatever else, so that the full exposure of your sun is available from that 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. window to maximize your solar gain in winter. You want to be aware of heights of other obstructions on your site. Something else to also think about is the types of trees on site. So there's a really there are a bunch of apps out there. There's one I use called Picture This. It's something I
Mhm.
actually vetted out with a bunch of landscape architects recently, and they seem to use it. So I'm gonna just recommend it as a legitimate source. But essentially, you can snap a picture of any planting or tree on your site, and it'll tell you right away what it'll just identify that tree for you. So the reason I mention this is because you've got your evergreen trees and your deciduous trees, and those play a huge role in how you're getting sun into your home. So something to think about is if you have deciduous trees on the south side of your building, that can actually help block out sun
Yeah.
in the summer when you don't want all that excessive heat, but then they lose their leaves in the winter. And so you can gain solar heat during cold days. So
Yeah.
deciduous trees on your south side could be a very good thing for you. On the other hand, evergreen trees, which don't lose their leaves, might be a great way to block out wind, harsh northern winter wind. So
Hmm.
you want to figure out on your site where you could maybe want to have a row of those, either plant them or see where they are on your site already, and site your house and those plantings accordingly. Um,
That's such a good point. I think that's such an easy thing to overlook. Is like you just said, is a lot of people will come onto a new construction project and they'll see the existing landscape as a problem, something that's like standing in the way of their goals for the home. But really, if you're thoughtful about it, it can actually be something like just as you're saying, maximizing heat in the winter, minimizing heat exposure in the summer, even cutting down on wind. Yeah, there's a lot of thought that can go into this that's so easy to overlook. I'm so glad you brought that up.
yeah, I think, if you're also thinking about siting your home and you're thinking that you
Mm.
want to go tech savvy and you decide from the beginning that solar panels are the way to go, and there's a 50-foot tree over your home, again, like start thinking about siting and how that's going to play a role in shading your roof and where you're going to have maximum solar access. I think
Mhm.
if you take the time to research your orientation and siting, then a lot of the program and the design of the spaces are just going to fall right into place.
Exactly. Yeah, there's so many little things that are just like they add up, and
Yeah.
if you just come up with a little bit more preparation, a little bit more thought, you can have a design that actually is going to serve you for a long time.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I don't think a lot of homes that are built today really take this into account unless you
Yeah.
go with a custom home builder that's willing to be more flexible, like
Yeah.
Reynard. But it's a lot of these are just they're like set designs that are not taking into account the very unique features of a site.
Right.
So this is why we've got to start thinking more in terms of the sun that's on your site and how you move through a space during the day. Where are you spending your most time? Um,
Well, and I think what I like about what you're saying is that I think there are technologies that we can invest in. There's we're going to talk about some of these things later on as we continue our series, our sustainability spotlight that we're going to be doing together. But there are technologies out there like ICF. There's different types of insulation panels that can go in. There's solar panels. I've had clients talk to me about catching rainwater and reusing that, and to save on how they're using their water. But there's also just simple things like orientation, like the landscape design, like the layout of the home. Those things don't cost a lot of money. It doesn't cost money to plan your home a certain way
yep.
and orient it in a certain way that takes advantage of what's out there. Or like you said, it's required now to do double glazed windows, and they're not that expensive to get a good window and door schedule built out that has a good R factor, that has good U values. Like they're out there and they don't cost a lot of money.
Yep. And the reason why they don't cost a lot are the same as what maybe has traditionally been specified is because it's the standard now.
Right,
Because the
exactly.
code's requiring it, all the manufacturers are following for it. So that's the trend that we're going to see in all sustainable design technologies is that once you create a standard for things, then the competition kind of like the economic competition sort of just levels out where everyone's pricing it out at the same because there's no other
Right.
means.
And that's the thing. You don't have to overdo your investment if you think wisely and think long term about what you want to get out of your home. This isn't
Yeah.
a huge home, but it's I think we've pointed out some of the ways that in the design we've tried to take advantage of a sustainable concept.
Yeah. And, I love that we're kicking off this series with passive design because
Mhm.
it's really about reducing your loads first before you add on any supplemental technologies and reduce the load further. Just create a manageable footprint. And so I think that's the takeaway from today is be very responsible with your building footprint and be very intentional so that you can reduce your loads from the onset and then we can manage them later.
Yeah. Farah, thank you so much. We're going to keep talking. We're nicknaming it our sustainability spotlight series. I call you Farah, but you're on your social media pages and your website. I think you like to use the handle Renewable Farah, and I like
Mhm.
that so people can find you. But you're on Twitter at Renewable Farah. Are there any other resources or ways that you'd like people to get in contact with you that you'd like to drop?
Yeah, anyone can just check out my website, farahnaazahmed.com, and you'll find links to all my handles there. And that's where I share a lot of these sustainable design resources. So just continue to follow this series as well, and we'll go into even more helpful tips. This is just a starter.
Yeah, and I will drop those links in there. Your website, I will say you've put a lot of work into it to make it a resource. So people like me and our clients who are constantly wanting to learn about how they can, you know, design with a long-term sustainable goal in mind. You've put a lot of resources out there that people can take advantage of. So I appreciate you being an awesome contributor to the community, to the built
Thank you.
community. and sparing your time with us today. Thank you, Farah.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, we'll have you back again soon. Again, we're by design. We're talking about sustainability spotlight with Farah. So we'll talk to you probably next month.
Sounds good. See you guys
All
next
right.
month.